Travis Wayne Goodsell. It has been brought to my attention that during this time of protesting for Black Lives to matter, that there are of necessity those who believe that the church has a history of racism back to Joseph Smith, not to Brigham Young. Even though the church confessed that Brigham Young was a racist, and the Genesis group in Mormonism has tried to remind people that Joseph was not a racist. And so this gives me an opportunity to go over more of the Book of Mormon code with you guys. I have a playlist, Book of Mormon code. This will be placed in that playlist with the other Book of Mormon coding. But to help Joseph's defense, as the Genesis group will rightly tell you, Joseph restored the gospel, restored the church, and had baptized blacks, gave them the priesthood as well. It was Brigham Young who took it away. Then Joseph Smith ran for president in 1844, the year he was dead, murdered, assassinated. And he ran on a brand new party name. I think it was called the Restitution Party. I'd have to go back and check his party platform flyer that he had printed. You can obtain those copies. They're available online in digital form. But he was, as part of his platform, he was an abolitionist. He wanted to abolish slavery. And that was quite radical at that time. There were movements and people who wanted to abolish slavery, but there wasn't an actual party platform for it, and no organization yet for that. So Joseph was a pioneer in that respect. And so now we come to the Book of Mormon, because as LDS critics learn, as Mormons remain in their bubble, no, I don't want to know. No, this is the true Book of Mormon. No, there is no other Book of Mormon. Even though Deseret Book published for the church the original Book of Mormon without the chapter and verses, it was just the text. And so the rich Mormons were able to acquire the copy, and so they're in the know because of their wealth. Just like the Joseph Smith papers, only the rich can purchase them. Regular Mormons have to go through the Joseph Smith papers to search for things to know that's needing to be searched for. And if you don't know what to search for, you're not going to know. For example, did you know that Joseph Smith had 2 chapters, which are now called sections in the Doctrine and Covenants, on monogamy as the way to be exalted in the celestial kingdom? They're gone, by the way. They're not in our current Doctrine and Covenants. Both of them are gone. And they got replaced with section 132, which is accusing Joseph Smith of having created this section. And it's now saying that polygamy is the only way to be exalted. Yeah, I'm sure we can all trust and believe this document, can't we, Mormons? All right, you do. Section 131. We have that, Joseph Smith Papers has it too. And when you read it, you go, I don't see any of this in that chapter or section. Where is this? What? Monogamy? Exalted? Huh. Yeah. Section 131. Right before section 132. Gone. And 132 is put in and says, polygamy. 10 virgins. No exaltation for you if you don't have 10 virgins, and only those who are in leadership positions get these extra women, because then there's no women left for the regular elders in the church. And so the elders then are wicked and evil, and they have to keep trying, and maybe one day they'll magically have a woman appear for them to be married to and have extra women, 10 virgins. In other words, you have to wait for the leaders to impregnate 10 virgins from their polygamous wives before you can have them, and you'll most likely be on your deathbed when they're finally old enough to breed. That's the tragedy of polygamy. So, racism. I've gone over that the Doctrine and Covenants was encoded. You can go into, let me bring up the official title on the Wikipedia page for it. Doctrine and Covenants Code Names. Wiki. List of code names in the Doctrine and Covenants. And so for those of you who are finding out for the first time, the Doctrine and Covenants before 1981, which is now where we have our current Doctrine and Covenants from, they went and did, the church service missionaries did a whole revision to put in footnotes, the topical guide, Bible dictionary, and what they also did was try to decode a lot of the names that were in the Doctrine and Covenants. They didn't get them all. I've done the videos on this. I even created a new Doctrine D&C code playlist to go over those. And so I can now throw this video into that playlist as well. But for example, Newell K. Whitney was encoded as Ahashda. Edward Partridge, Alam. Joseph Smith was Enoch Gazilam, which is interesting because it's Gazilem in the Book of Mormon. Oh, did you catch that? That's how I know that the Book of Mormon was encoded, is because if they encoded the Doctrine and Covenants, they also would have encoded other materials. So yes, the Book of Mormon is encoded, and they share a common encoded name that has not been decoded. And what is that name? For those of you who are regulars on my channel and who've been to or seen that video, Doctrine and Covenants, Section 1, verse 16. But you need to understand the context of who he's talking to in order to understand how it's to be decoded properly and not just assign some nation. It's Babylon. Shall perish in Babylon. Shall is a future tense word. Shall perish in Babylon. Even Babylon the Great, which shall fall. If you know your world history, you know that Babylon's been long since fallen. The Persians felded it. And so, yeah, this is encoded right there in the Doctrine and Covenants. Guess where this word also appears in a certain Mormon book? Oh, right, yeah, the Book of Mormon. Exactly. And so we can safely conclude that the Book of Mormon is encoded, which means it's not an actual history of the American Indians. Uh-oh. Which means that, yes, the LDS critics are right that the Book of Mormon is plagiarized. They specifically chose certain books to be plagiarized in the Book of Mormon in specific places with certain code names to encode a message. And in many cases it was, at least in the beginning portions, the replacement of the 116 pages, for example. Those were during that period of time for the most part. There was patterns, leaving the promised land, going to a new promised land, leaving that promised land, going to another new promised land, leaving that promised land, going to another new promised land. That pattern or theme, it was specifically put in there for a future period. But some of the early stories were about the Smiths and their experience in Western New York. Uh-oh, I just gave away a clue. And so the parts where it is racist, as people on the outward recognize, have been removed and replaced with other words in later editions. Instead of white and delightsome, it became pure and delightsome, for example. And they still have, I think, their Lamanite skin became black, and therefore they were loathsome to the Nephites. Those things on the surface, oh, that's horrible racism. How could they say such a thing? And all this giving the priesthood to blacks is just hypocrisy and shame. Trying to, running for president as an abolitionist when he has this book talking about blacks as loathsome. And then you have that Utah legislator who gets nicknamed Bigot Butters, who does the hugest mistake of his career as he soon thereafter retires. This baby is black. It is a dark and loathsome thing. Oh, God. He came into the genealogical library that I was in one morning and tried to figure out how to do a print screen of the genealogical program so that he could do a presentation. They wanted me to ask him if there was any kind of help I can receive, having been abandoned by my wife who took away my kids and took away the property and had to redo my whole research on Paleo-Hebrew decipherment. I said, no. Computer technology was not developed enough yet at that time, and we didn't have the upgraded computers at that time to do print screens from that program. So, bye, Bigot Butters. But yeah, what an ugly mess that was. But that's what the coding was for, is for human beings, white men who were racist. who were so loathsome for their hatred of humanity, for their hatred of other human beings, just because the skin color was different than white. That's what they're talking about, is that these Lamanites, because remember, Laman was the birthright blessing son of Lehi. It was his right to be the leader of the tribe. And yet you watch that because of Laman's hatred and disobedience and defiance, despite his being the firstborn to be the next king of the family, of the tribe, he loses it. And Nephi gets it. And that makes him more angry, more hateful, that he despises Nephi to the point where he wants to have him murdered. Not just subjected to him as a slave, but murdered. His family and those who followed Nephi, no, they can be enslaved, but Nephi must be murdered. That's the coding. It is not skin color. They use the skin color as the coding for the soul of these white men that they are referring to. And these white men are racist. Their souls are so loathsome, so dark, that it just causes you to tremble with fear when they speak, when they spew their hate, when they spew their lies, so that they can justify enslaving people, to justify murder. And we are witnessing it right now in our society, in America, as white supremacists are being exposed throughout this nation in the police forces, in government positions of authority. They have infiltrated America. They have risen up into positions of trust. They have taken over positions of authority in government up to the highest levels. This was the warning in the Book of Mormon. And we are witnessing the truth of the Book of Mormon. And how Mormons, instead of believing in the Book of Mormon, chose instead to be the fulfillment of the hatred, the haters, the loathsome human life. Wow. Cool, huh?